order the regular session of the Oregon City Commission for Wednesday, January 17th, 2018. Call roll, please.
Commissioner Shaw?
Here.
Commissioner Mengelberg?
Here.
Commissioner Ide?
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Here.
Mayor Holliday?
Here. Please stand and join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we're going to move right into presentations. This is 3A18-032, and I have just a couple comments to make before I invite our guest up. In full disclosure, our first guest is my niece, Elizabeth Bareth, and she survived a pretty ugly childhood. Her dad was a not such nice guy when he was when she was a very young child. And so Lizzie's here to tell her story and to talk about the company she works for and some events that she's attended and moving forward. So Elizabeth, you want to come up and introduce your friend as well?
This is President Dave Skiller-Brad, Robert Clamp.
How you guys doing?
Welcome.
Well,
Thank you.
how you doing?
We'll have a seat or just...
Yeah, no, have a seat. Have a seat. And if you would start with your name and city of residence for the record, please.
Well, my name is Robert Clamp. I'm not quite the president. I'm the director of plant operations. President was my former name. And I am a resident of Oregon City.
Awesome.
Right.
My name is Elizabeth Bareth. I work in charitable contributions, and I live in Damascus.
So Elizabeth and I talked a little bit before. I'm just going to brief, and my comment card said limited to 3 minutes, so I will keep this as brief as possible.
Presentations. So,
Okay.
We typically plan on around 15 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to talk a little bit about Dave Skiller-Brad and where we are today, and talk about a few things about what we stand for, and then share a little bit about my impact and my experiences with Dave Skiller-Brad and my story. And then Elizabeth is going to go into her story with Dave Skiller-Brad, because she's got a great one. For if all you know is Dave Skiller-Brad is the #1 organic bread in the nation by far. It doesn't even come close to the next one. It was started here in Portland. It was started by the Dahl family. They actually owned a bakery called Nature Bake. It after years of running Nature Bake and making local bread products, Glenn Dahl, who was the eldest brother who owned the bakery, welcomed back in his brother Dave Dahl after spending off and on 15 years in prison. And the story goes, he had him come down to the bakery just to play around with a few formulas, and that's literally how Dave's Killer Bread got made. They started selling at the Portland's Farmers Market, and the rest is history to a nationwide brand. And we are in all 50 states, every province of Canada, Guam, Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Mexico, and we're trying to get farther than that. So, I mean, it's a great brand. And really what it's all based off, and what we're here to talk about a little bit, is the second chances. It's all based off that second chance that Glenn Dahl gave to his brother Dave. And he welcomed him back into open arms after years of having a real trouble. Like I said, 15 years. It wasn't all at once, but it was broken up. I think he did. His last stint was 8 years in Massachusetts before coming back to Portland. And he kind of gave him that chance. And that's what Dave's Killer Bread is really all about. We have 247 employees at Dave's Killer Bread currently, and roughly anywhere from 30 to 40% are what we call second chance folks, people with felony backgrounds. I'm going to tell you right now that it has been a huge success with Dave's Killer Bread. Absolutely outstanding. And I'm going to tell you why. And it's because companies these days need to cast the largest labor pool they can to get the best quality people. And there are quality people out there that are in the prison system that had either skills or trades or have a real desire to turn their life around. And I can't give you all the stories. We don't have enough time, but there's countless stories. I'm going to share a few. I actually came to Dave's Killer Bread about 4.5 years ago. I'm an engineer by trade. I came as came into some massive expansions in Dave's Killer Bread. And to be honest with you, I had no idea who had a felony background or who didn't. And it turns out some of the most skilled workers within my department of engineering had felony backgrounds. They were electricians, they were HVAC techs, they had worked in steel mills, and those trades wouldn't welcome them back into their workplace. And the two biggest things for someone re-entering the workplace, two things: a job and a place to live. And if they have those two things, statistics show that they're going to be able to re-enter back into the workforce. So we were able to take those skills, and I'm going to tell you what, I used them. I still use them today. And they have been tremendous. Some share their stories with me, some don't. To be honest with you, at my facility, I have no idea who has a second chance background unless they tell me, and I don't want to know. But I can tell you, some of those people that do are some of the most loyal, best workers. So I really am committed to that. I believe in it. I believe I will preach to businesses or any other who will listen to me, and we have a lot of people will, that companies really need to take a look at their second chance because they're a great story. And I'm going to segue that with that story with Elizabeth here, who has a great story. So Elizabeth, you want to take that?
I grew up in Gladstone, just a typical family. My dad was in and out of jail, in and out of prison my whole life. And unfortunately, I kind of followed in his steps. I personally have never been in prison, but I've been in and out of jail, and I am in recovery. I've been at Dave's for a little over 2 years now. I've been in recovery for almost 3. And you know, when I got out, I couldn't even afford to do my laundry. And DHS was shelling out money so I could do the coin op or so I could get food stamps or this or that. And today I have my son back and I can feed him and myself. I pay my rent. I have my own car. I have 2 cars, you know, and it's because I was able to find a job and that stable housing that helped me blossom. And I think that's the important part about it is I hit a lot of barriers, a lot of doors were shut because I had to mark that box. And it's really sad because 1 in 4 people are felons. But those people, if you give them a chance, we will blow you out of the water. We will be dedicated. We will show up every day. And I think it's really important. This stuff is very important.
Good. I'm going to brag a little bit on Elizabeth here. Elizabeth works in our donation department, but when I first met Elizabeth, she worked in our ovens department, which, if you can imagine, is a very physical job. We have a lot of rack ovens. We move a lot, very hot area. And I remember seeing her, and I was like, wow, she really held her own out there in the ovens department and really worked hard. And now she works in the donations department. And just to give you an idea, Dave's Killer Bread donates to the community. We have multiple food shelter, food banks and different places that we donate food from or donate food to. And Elizabeth is there every day taking in our returns and sorting and getting it out. And I mean, Elizabeth's hard work allowed us, just through the donations and the tracking and the hard work she does every day. I don't know if you know this, but we as a company got a $324,000 tax credit. So she's pulling her own right now. And I'm telling you, I went over to see her to talk about this. Yeah, right? Wait a minute. I went over to see her to talk about this, and really, you know, she didn't have time to talk. She had work to do, and she was really getting it done. So she's out. I mean, she's just one of many people here. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the summit. I know that was something.
I was about to ask you
talk about that, and Elizabeth. So me and Elizabeth went to what that's called the Dave's Killer Bread Foundation summit. Dave's Killer Bread Foundation is not a part of the bakery, but it is sponsored and funded and supported by our bakery. We have an executive director. Her name is Genevieve Martin, and we hold summits. We've held in Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, and we held one in Atlanta. It was a great presentation. We had the governor of Georgia there. We had Van Jones and Sir Richard Branson did a it wasn't Skype, but it was a Skype-like kind of thing from one of his, I don't know, islands or companies or wherever he was. And we had a lot of other great community leaders in the area, and then also business leaders, and we got to talk, and what it is 3 panels. And the first one, which is the best and most important, was what Elizabeth sat on, was the employee panel, where employees came up and told their story. And then after that, it was debunking the myth, where we go into a lot of where we talk about your insurance rates don't go up. There's really not a risk. I was just talking with my HR director today. 4.5 years, we haven't had a major incident at Dave's Killer Bread, and I've had major incidents at other companies I've worked for. And then also, I mean, getting the loyal employees and the people that come in and they really do work hard. And the people that we leave, we've actually done the statistics, the people that leave or get terminated, they're no higher, it's actually a little bit, just slightly better being a second chance employee than being a regular employee with, as far as through our 6 years we've been keeping records. So, you know, we kind of try to get companies and organizations to really look at second chance people and hire. And I got to speak on the employer panel at the end, and you know, show my passion and show how it's really helped us at Dave's Killer Bread. And I know you had a great experience, Elizabeth. If you want to talk a little bit about your experience as well there at the summit in Atlanta.
So I think the biggest takeaway for me, because I was at the Seattle Summit and I was at the Atlanta Summit, and the biggest takeaway for me was I was amazed. The governor of Atlanta said when he came into office, they told him, you're going to have to open more prisons. And since then, he's been able to close prisons. His ideas of rehabilitation and what he's doing is just miraculous, with education, and then housing and job training, and just getting people ready to re-enter the workforce and to re-enter our community in a healthy manner. But also in Seattle, some of the things they're doing, and it all started in California when they took away the 3 strikes and you're out, and it just kind of blossomed from there. But just to see what all these different communities are doing, and I just think it's so exciting that Oregon can finally like jump on with that, you know, because a lot of it I haven't seen here, to be completely honest. And some of the statistics they put out, you know, there are 1 in 28 kids whose parents are felons. And that's really hard to navigate past that. Even with a healthy mom and a sick dad, it's still really hard to navigate that as a child. 1 in 4 people are felons. It's just 1 out of those 4 will go back because they won't find work, or they won't be able to hold down steady work or find a place to live, and they will resort to doing to what they know best, unfortunately. And that was the biggest takeaway for me. I think it is amazing what they're doing, and I can't wait to see everybody just merge together. It'll be great.
So I wanted to say, I lurk a lot on Facebook. I don't comment a lot. But when I saw Lizzie post about the Second Chance Summit, and she was going and then she came back, and I read some other posts from her, once in a while I think it's good for us to hear positive things. And so I wanted to share that with you and the audience on television, and say that we certainly appreciate Dave's Killer Bread and the work that you guys do for the Second Chance folks, and appreciate you coming and sharing your story. Anybody have any questions?
Well, I want to congratulate you on your success, not only as a person, but for your operations there too. And before you leave here, I want you to give your card to Mr. Eric Underwood here, because we would appreciate having an opportunity to have your operations in Oregon City up in our new industrial area.
Same thing. And I just have one question for Elizabeth. So what would you identify as the single most important thing that helped you once you got out of jail, that helped bring you success and get you on a good path?
I feel like so the guy that gave me a chance at Dave's, his name is, oh my goodness. He just left.
Rob Gillis.
Robert Gillis. We were talking a little bit, he told me a little bit of his history and how he's where he's gone since he started. And I feel like that gave me hope. And I think having hope, something to look forward to, looking forward to getting up every day and going to work, looking forward to getting my kid every weekend, looking forward to adulting, paying my rent. I never used to do that. I never used to have a house. You know, those things gave me hope. And I think that hope kept me going, even when it got a little tough, because for a long time I walked, I rode my bike, I caught the bus, rain, shine. I was so sick sometimes from the winter, just ugh. But that hope is what made me keep going, because I saw something better that I wanted. And I saw somebody that was willing to give me a chance to prove myself, to work for it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
Well, I think you touched on a couple of key points. You meet people in your life and they change your life, some for the better, some for the worse. But the approach of Dave's Killer Bread, you know, it accomplishes what oftentimes government cannot. You know, you can either try to work from the top down or you can work from the local level. And I see those successes on a more one-to-one basis like you're doing. So I hope others follow the lead and do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rana? Well, thanks for coming. Appreciate it. And we were serious about you giving Eric your.
No, I sure will. We'll just leave it there. I'll leave a card, and I'd love to talk to you. But Mayor Holliday, thank you so much for having us.
Oh, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So next up, we have my old friend and colleague, Larry Didway. And once again, I already forgot your name, I'm sorry. The chair of the school board.
I'll announce it.
All right. I hadn't turned my presentation on yet. Connie Kurtman.
You need to turn that on or no?
Do I need to turn the mic on?
Are the buttons, are they lit red?
Yep.
Then you're good.
Red says stop.
Now, the former people set the stage for you here. We're all, you know,
All right.
uplifting here and stuff, all right?
Good evening, Commission. My name is Connie Kurtman. I am a resident of the hamlet of Beaver Creek, and I am proud to serve as the chair of the awesome Oregon City School District. With me here tonight is our superintendent, Larry Didway. And we're both really pleased to have this opportunity to come and share with you and give you an update on, you know, what's going on. The school board's work in progress to improve learning environments across the city and the district. We want to begin by thanking you. Did I already thank you? If I did, I'll thank you again for having us here tonight. Healthy, vibrant schools need a vibrant, healthy community, and vice versa. And our work is very interdependent with yours. So, Mr. Didway.
So, and we wholeheartedly endorse the second chance concept that was just shared with you for sure. But I would say let's go ahead and close more prisons, open more schools, and make the most of the first chance. That's what we're here about. And we know that the Commission's work and your goals are include enhancing the qualities of this historic city, and in a way that's going to contribute to a family-centered environment, a great place to work and pursue business interests, a place that's safe and secure, a place with affordable and accessible housing options, and a place that honors and really reflects its historic roots. And we're here tonight to share with you because we think that Oregon City School District is the perfect partner, and we want to be a meaningful and significant partner in your agenda.
Our community can be really proud of our local public schools. We're always striving to improve and be better, but we take pride in our outstanding students and our very much award-winning staff. Oregon City schools are consistently recognized as state leaders for school improvement efforts and responsible fiscal management that receives the highest national ratings for return on educational investment and public accountability for financial oversight.
And we achieved those results despite some pretty significant challenges over many years. Since the passage of Measure 5 in 1990 and Measure 50 in 1997, the funding for schools really comes largely from the state, which was a change. Since that time, funding has dropped from about 6% above the national average to about 11% below the national average. And that's really made it a struggle for us to maintain our current service levels, much less increase them. And we've also struggled with escalating costs, declining enrollment, which is sometimes a surprise to people, but there have been demographic shifts I'm sure that you're aware of, and aged facilities, which put a strain on our operating budgets.
A school bond is one of the very few ways a local community can invest in its schools and keep the investment right here to impact our children and our economy. To start our conversation about future school bond, we were going to share a short video with you, but unfortunately, we're having technical difficulties, which we never have those, you know, at the district office. But.
So
This was your technical difficulty, not ours?
let's call it a technical unavailability.
There you go.
We thought you would probably prefer to watch it with sound rather than without. So, but we would like you to watch it, and if you would like to, you can do that in one of two ways. You can either go to our website and watch it on the website, or you can attend a meeting that we'll share with information with you about later. But in that video, it really highlights something that happened here in Oregon City in the year 2000 when our community passed a school bond that was used largely to build Oregon City High School that opened in 2003. And yeah, we still call it the new high school. But that was a really transformational moment in our community and certainly for high school education experience in Oregon City. And in 2011, our school board refinanced that bond. And we paid it off early, and it now will be retired in 2020. And that provides us a desperately needed opportunity to reinvest public funds in our school facilities. At that point, the school board embarked in a long-range plan, putting together a long-range facility advisory committee that met regularly over 2 years and reviewed all of the physical condition and educational adequacy of every single school building. We reviewed our enrollment projections and patterns that were collected and analyzed by the Population Center, or Population Research Center of Portland State University. And we developed a vision for modern learning environments that would prepare students for their future and really meet the needs of our community. And finally, this fall, a blue ribbon panel of citizens, and which included Mr. Shaw, formed a bond development task force. And that group helped refine and define the scope of projects that would be recommended to the board, as well as a budget for placing a potential bond on the November 2018 ballot.
The school board recently passed a resolution to adopt the recommendations of the Bond Development Task Force and asked that community leaders be solicited and brought to the February 12th school board meeting. The broad scope of the proposed plan is to increase safety and security at every school, replace both middle schools, and enhance career and technical education spaces at the high school level. We're really excited about, getting kids ready for their future, whether it be tech, college, straight to workforce. A full description of this master plan is included in your handout. The total cost of this proposal is $188 million, which would likely be assessed at no more than $1.54 per thousand of assessed property value. The current school bond was approved at an estimate of $2 per 1,000, but because of population growth, increased assessed value, and board refinancing, it is currently assessed at only $1.14 per 1,000 of assessed property value. Our next steps include community engagement meetings, community outreach, the forming of a bond citizen oversight committee, and potentially a formal decision by the school board late this spring to place a bond measure on November 6, 2018 ballot. And you can see on the PowerPoint there that we do have a public meeting tomorrow night at Ogden Middle School, and would certainly invite anyone on the commission. No?
I think it's next week.
Oh, excuse me.
Next Tuesday. Yeah.
Next Tuesday. I'm so sorry. Wow, I'm so excited for it. You know, I just want to speed it up and get everyone
A
there.
couple key things are happening on that date, so I.
Okay, yes, that's the start. Anyway, I would encourage anyone in the listening audience, and certainly commissioners, we would love to have you there.
Yeah. And we certainly hope to be welcome back here in the late spring to provide an update to you on that progress regarding these efforts. And in the meantime, we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions, comments?
There was, I think, somebody might have brought it up, Mayor Holliday, about, I don't know if we can talk about locations or not for the middle school. So there was always a comment about urban schools and our kind of lack of, but so maybe you want to talk about
You mean the abandonment of Central City by the school district?
Well, this will be good news.
Or by families. I would start with by families.
Yeah. So this will be good news for you, Mayor Holliday. So maybe you want to talk about what you're going to do with the middle schools.
Yeah, the current proposal, and I think it's outlined in the handouts that you have, are to replace both middle schools. And one concept would be to rebuild a new Gardner Middle School on the site where it currently is, while it is still operating where it is, and then remove the existing building. That site is a great site for a middle school. It's well located. The building itself, when we went through the process of identifying its needs and calculating what it would cost to upgrade, it was nearly the cost of building new. And so that was the concept that has moved forward as a recommendation to the board. At Ogden Middle School, it's a little different. The facility, I like to say it's our new middle school. It's the new middle school that opened the same year I was born. And
I attended Ogden.
yeah. At Ogden, the physical plant is in better condition. However, it still doesn't meet the needs of the current population we have there, nor is it located in a space that is easily accessible or it handles the kind of traffic that it faces today. And so instead, we have a first right of refusal on property elsewhere near Holcomb Elementary, actually adjacent to Holcomb Elementary, where we would locate and build a new Ogden Middle School and then repurpose the existing Ogden Middle School for a future elementary school.
It's in my backyard.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I have a question. You'd mentioned that the current bond ends in 2020, and assuming that this bond measure is successful in 2018, would there then be two bond measures at the same time for a couple of years?
It wouldn't, they would overlap, but they wouldn't exceed the assessed rate estimate, if that makes sense. So there's a stair step in the last year of the bond.
Okay.
It goes significantly down.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I think you're going to face an uphill battle in a bond measure.
Yeah.
And I think there's more questions than answers. And I think the community questions why schools are closed and then get sublet to other educational institutions. Mm-hmm. And I think there's so many questions. And there's no question about I'd like to see security in every school increased. Mm-hmm. I don't care if that means metal detectors at every door. I don't want to see ever a tragedy in this system that we've seen elsewhere. The only other thing I'd say in closing is I'd like to start seeing somebody from the school system attend these meetings of this commission when we're looking at annexations and the impact on the community. Because we've had multiple times we've seen no one here. And I think you should come in and make a statement as to the effect on the school system, because silence is viewed as approval. And yet we come out and we say we need capacity. So it's pretty straightforward talk, but I wanted you to hear it.
Yeah, this isn't, and I want to be really clear, we're not talking about increasing capacity at the elementary level. Our forecasting for elementary level, as you might have guessed, is decreased significantly. We've raised the level of enrollment at our existing elementary schools, and we did close elementary schools. And we did that really from an operational standpoint, because again, our budget comes largely from the state, and our state budget wasn't adequate to run the size of schools that we had Plus, our enrollment was significantly decreasing. Regarding hearings, we'd be happy to do that. It is impossible for me or the board members to attend planning commissioning meetings. They're held exactly at the same time as our school board meetings. And that might be why you've noticed we don't attend those. But we have and can send representatives.
I think more to Commissioner O'Donnell's point is that when something comes before the Planning Commission, I know that the city sends a notification to the district and at the same time for annexations and for subdivisions, and we rarely, if ever, get a response back either pro or con, and we'd like to see a little bit better communication from those things so that at least, you know, if you say we're adding a subdivision and you guys say, yeah, that's great, we've got plenty of capacity at the school where that's going to be or whatever the case, at least we have that information.
Right. Yeah. You know, what we would, and I want to be really clear, we would never see it in our role to oppose or serve as a proponent for any particular annexation or development. Instead, it's our responsibility to meet the educational needs of the students.
Right, but in the same light,
however,
our citizens say, well, how come the school district doesn't say anything?
And what we've submitted is enrollment and enrollment capacity.
Okay. Yeah. So if we could just have a more consistent approach as far as responding to city's requests for the school district about those items, I think that would go a long way towards being able to resolve questions citizens have when they come and testify about either pro or con about either an annexation or a subdivision.
Right.
And so Larry might share what the enrollment has done in Oregon City versus Gladstone, and that's to get the ups and downs is that we are down, Oregon City is, but Gladstone went up 140.
No.
You know?
Yeah, I think what you're sharing is just recently I was at a meeting with superintendents from around the county, and we just noticed a trend that I would describe as just a realization of gentrification in the metropolitan area. And just for example, this particular school year, North Clackamas School District, Gladstone School District, and Oregon City School District all experienced a decrease or a decline in enrollment. And as you move south, that decrease would get less and less. And so ours was a moderate decrease. Gladstone and North Clackamas was significant. When you get to Canby, there was a slight increase. But when you get to Estacada, there was a significant increase. At the same time, our free and reduced lunch rates at the school districts where our enrollment went down, the free and reduced lunch rate also went down. However, the free and reduced lunch rate at the school districts where they were growing went up. So you can see that there's a real push out because of the lack of affordable and accessible housing, and that is definitely a demographic trend that you can see in Clackamas County.
So if you're going to close Ogden at some point in the future, what would you do with that land?
We weren't proposing closing Ogden. We were proposing relocating the Ogden Middle School.
Oh, and you're going to make Ogden into an elementary.
And then convert the existing Ogden Middle School into a future elementary school.
That's a pretty big building for an elementary school, isn't it?
It's larger than some, yeah.
Just have a little space.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Thanks for coming.
I'd like to commend the commitment to CTE at the high school. I think it's really important to be educating our high school students about career opportunities, and technology is the wave of the future, and anything the district can do to prepare them for that is really a wise investment.
Yeah, thank you.
And I have to concur with Commissioner Mengelberg. A few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I replaced the fire alarm at Benson High School. And so I spent 6 months there from 4 o'clock in the afternoon till like 2 o'clock in the morning working on the system. And as we walked through that building, I mean, Benson back in the day was a place where that was like the gem of the CTE movement. You know, they had a machine shop, they had photography studios, they had an aviation wing, they had an auto mechanics wing and a small engine wing, and just all different sorts of things. And when I was going through doing that, fully half of those spaces were empty. The foundry was, empty. The aviation space was empty. And so, we have to think about that. And when I was at the old building at the high school, we still had an electronics thing. I did my electronics study in the basement of where is now WFMC. We had an auto shop. We had all that stuff. And it gave kids that weren't going to go to college that leg up to be able to go do something right out of high school that they could earn money at. And so I definitely am, having been a career tradesman all my life, it's a hugely important thing to realize that. I mean, I knew from probably the time all of my kids were in a freshman in high school at their different points, who was going to be going to college and who wasn't. And my youngest, my son, was a prime example. I knew he wasn't going to be able to go to college, and we thought we had him on a military heading, and he met a girl, and the rest is history. But he's now is a mechanic in the auto industry. So, I think it's important that we realize that not only aren't all kids going to go to college, but we don't need all kids to go to college. There are a lot of kids out there that have graduated college with a Bachelor of Arts degree that are serving coffee at Starbucks. So, if we're going to ask families to spend the money to send their kids to school, I would hope that they would be smart enough to make sure that their kids were doing something they could get a job with afterwards, and if not, that the education system that we're giving them in Oregon City gives them a path to do something else. And working with companies like Benchmade or Miles Fiberglass and some of the other large employers we have here would be a good start with that.
Benchmade and Miles Fiberglass are two partners for us with our Clackamas Academy for Industrial Science, which is a great example of a career and technical education school. And we continue to expand our partnerships with local manufacturing and industry partners, as well as Clackamas Community College, who I cannot say enough good things about as a great partner and helping us help kids find their passion and have a pathway to a career.
Coming from the private sector, I couldn't agree more with what Dan says, because I was responsible for hiring of skilled labor. If you're a skilled machinist, if you have a machining background, if you have trades skills, you can get a job, and you'll get a job before a philosophy major will get a job. So,
Not that there's anything wrong with being a philosophy major.
Well, you can philosophize as to why you didn't get a job. But, I just think that there's a place for everything, and Dan's point about not everyone goes to college, that shouldn't be the exclusive focus.
It's really interesting to attend our charter school cases graduation, because a lot of these kids are already employed before they even graduate from high school. That's how, very highly sought after, highly skilled, and they've learned life skills. They've learned about the importance of being on time, being,
That's funny you say that.
good attendance, and
Work ethic.
work ethic, exactly.
The two hardest things you get is somebody that shows up and somebody that shows up on time.
Exactly.
But I've written workforce grants, and there's many businesses that will partner with you. I did it for a very high-end machine shop where educational institutions will not have those type of machines, and our contribution in the same type of thing, we used our machines to train those people. I mean, it's all about providing people the means to earn a good living. Thanks.
Absolutely.
So on a last comment to the board chair, as I said to you before, I served on the school board, and there is no more thankless task in politics than serving on the school board. So I want to just say that I appreciate your service.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor
Thank you, guys.
Halpin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to citizen comments. Oh, no, sorry. I have some appointments to make. So I'm going to appoint the Citizen Involvement Committee members for 2018. And they are as follows. This is for, January 2018 to December 31st, 2019. For the Barkley Hills Neighborhood Association, we have Janice Morris as the primary and John Eason as the alternate. For Kanema, we have Dennis Anderson as the primary and Linda Basinger as the alternate. For Caulfield, we have Mike Mitchell as the primary and Robert Malchow as the alternate. For Gaffney Lane, Amy Wilhite as the primary and Micah Scott as the alternate. The Hazel Grove Westling Farm Neighborhood Association is inactive. The South End Neighborhood Association temporarily combined with Hazel Grove Westling Farm Neighborhood Association until volunteers can be identified to lead the Hazel Grove Westling Farm Neighborhood Association. The Hillendale Neighborhood Association primary Roy Harris and alternate Ray Stobie. McLaughlin Neighborhood Association James King and the alternate is vacant. For Park Place Neighborhood Association, we have Steve Van Haverbeek and Greg Stone as the alternate. For Rivercrest Neighborhood, we have Karen Morey as the primary and the alternate is vacant. For the South End, both of those positions are vacant. And for Tower Vista, the CIC primary is Vern Johnson. And so I'm making those appointments now.
Can I ask a quick question?
You may.
I don't know if Laura's here this evening. Oh, okay. I just had a quick question about the public improvement plan. That was a really great plan that was developed a couple years ago, and I was just wondering if the CIC is working on implementing that and how. Or if you want to prepare for a later time, I'd just be really curious.
Thank you, Laura Turway, Community Development Director for the city. Yes, they did take a large effort to put together a public improvement plan. Each neighborhood association has been implementing that, and you're going to see them circle back around to that again in 2018 to see if there are ways that we can implement it better. The public improvement plan included opportunities
Involvement plan?
Involvement plan included opportunities for neighborhood associations to reach out to the public. It also included strategies like using a speakerphone during meetings so people could hear, thinking about daycare options and that sort of thing, and timing of meetings and different strategies to reach the public. I can give you more updates on that at a work session if you like, or.
I was just curious, where they were at and if each neighborhood association was participating in that. Just, it's hard to get people involved, and so I thought that would be a really great way to get started on it.
I suspect that the neighborhood associations utilize it at various levels, some more than others.
At least there's a tool. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so moving on, we're at citizen comments. Do we have any?
Yes, James Nisita.
Mr. Nisita, come up.
Oh, sorry about it. Just like this. Happy to help. So, good evening. James Nisita, Oregon City. I'm here tonight to request that the commission give consideration to the idea of attaching two city-owned vacant parcels of land along Washington Street to Abernethy Creek Park. They are on the map I've provided, tax lot 2600 and an unimproved but unvacated stub of 16th Street on the west side of Washington Street. I think tax lot 2600 is not as big as this map shows it to be because of the widening of Washington Street that was done in conjunction with the Abernethy Bridge replacement several decades ago. But I thought expanding Abernethy Creek Park in this manner might accomplish a couple of things. One, I think if a footbridge of some sort could be attached or crossed from the 16th Street stub to the main part of Abernethy Creek Park, I think access could be greatly improved. And also it would make Abernethy Creek Park easier to patrol by our police officers. I had that thought after the tragedy that we experienced several weeks ago with the woman who died in the fire, the homeless lady who was had set up a fire there and it got out of control. And I think it could make more use of the park by, for example, people walking up with lunches during the lunch hour and being able to access the park over a footbridge where it's really not accessible now to that employment population like at the Willamette Falls Center, because you have to walk all the way up to Washington Street to Abernethy Road and then back down John Adams Street. And tax lot 2600, I think there could be some creekside benches placed there for pedestrians walking north and south on Washington Street. And finally, if Abernethy Creek Park had frontage along Washington Street, I think it would also increase usage and with some signage just to let the community know it's there, because it's very hidden right now and not very well known, but it's a very beautiful park. And with more visibility and easier access, I think it could be used more. And I think, again, with greater use, it could be made much more safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Everybody okay with the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to public hearings, 6A 18-017, first reading of ordinance number 18-1001, creating downtown economic improvement district. Mr. Underwood.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Commissioners. This public hearing is an extension of the originally scheduled public hearing on December 20, 2017. And it's a result of a resolution that was adopted in November 2017, calling for a public hearing regarding renewal of the city's economic improvement district. This is considered the first public hearing to determine whether the Commission wishes to assess the district for a 4-year period. At the previous meeting, the Commission requested further information and required additional time for review of proposed EID materials. Tonight, we hope to provide clarification on those issues brought up in the December meeting and answer any additional questions the Commission might have tonight. The Downtown Oregon City Association has been invited to provide clarification on the EID methodology and give an update on its outreach efforts to date throughout the district. Also, I'd like to mention that a letter of support from White Rabbit was submitted earlier today, and each of you should have received a letter earlier from the Downtown Oregon City Association Board President Carol Pauley. You should have that from you guys. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jonathan Stone, the Executive Director for Downtown Oregon City Association.
So I think before that, I'm going to open the public hearing. Okay.
Good evening, Mayor Holliday and Commissioners. My name is Carol Pauley. I live in Oak Grove, and I'm the president of Downtown Oregon City Association. So we really took it to heart with what you said last time about doing more outreach, and I can't remember what you said, Mayor Holliday, something about half-baked. So I believe it's full-baked now.
See.
We reached out to a few business owners, and we also really, listened to their concerns as far as messaging and things not being clear. So we brought it back to our executive board, and we kind of retooled our messaging and also made some exciting changes that I think you've read, hopefully you've had a chance to. And then our board yesterday approved it. So kind of a different system to do the EIDs so that the ratepayers see exactly what their value is and have a little bit of say in it as well. So I'd like to turn it over to Jonathan Stone, who has a wonderful PowerPoint presentation for you.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Stone, and I'm the Executive Director of the Downtown Oregon City Association, as well as a resident of Oregon City. since last time almost turned into a presentation with so many questions back and forth, we thought it would be beneficial to sort of maybe preempt some questions with the presentation, with the short presentation, and give you a little bit more context to how we've arrived to the point that we are today. So basically, I want to give you an update on the outreach we've done since the last hearing. A brief overview, very brief overview of Main Street programs, but to the relevance with respect to property value. Just a mention of EIDs across the state, our strategies and objectives, and overall work plan, as well as looks like this PowerPoint was put together today, so never mind to the repeat there. But anyways, since our last hearing, we have done additional outreach, and in your packet, you had received a letter from us. I believe we submitted it last Tuesday, where total outreach effort to date had been about 45%, and we have now had dialogue with over 60% of the ratepayers, and 60% of property owners representing over 60% of the district. And the vast majority of those are in support of the proposed plan and also support the other work that the organization does. But as Carol mentioned, with some of those supporters, it was clear there was some confusion about exactly how the EID pays, what the EID pays for, and how it fits into our overall budget. And we'll discuss that refined plan here in a little bit, which was included in that letter that we gave to you all earlier today. So just to the point of why the EID has been kind of integral to the Main Street Oregon City, or the Downtown Oregon City Association since 2011, is in some ways what state statute allows for economic improvement districts basically describes a Main Street organization. And what is a Main Street organization is based on 4 points, which happen to be what they call the forces that impact property value. So sometimes it's hard to understand how events and marketing fit into it. Sometimes it's hard to understand some of these other things that we do, but when you look back and and try and understand what real estate is all about, what moves the needle on property value, it's the social impacts, the economic impacts, the physical and environmental impacts, and the government and political impacts. And you can roughly translate those to the Main Street 4-point approach, and which we follow a comprehensive model, because if you just did one, you wouldn't necessarily be applying the strategy across all the things. And then just a reminder that in terms of a national model, we happen to be recognized as a top 10 semifinalist for the Great American Main Street Award, which I hope suggests to you all and that we take our work seriously and really want Oregon City to be the best that it can be. Mm-hmm. So just so you know, in Oregon there are, I didn't count them, many economic improvement districts, and probably some of the towns that you look to and respect have had long-running economic improvement districts in them. And across the country, or they're not called EIDs in other states, they're come by many different names: BIDs, PBIDs, PIAs, to name a few, and the National Main Street Center actually recommends this as a strategy for funding downtown revitalization, so in the Oregon equivalent, which is the Economic Improvement District. But what is clear across the entire country is that those things are generally focused on property benefit and enhanced ongoing services. Just to give you a context to our, what we call our transformation strategies, is we see that the goal is to enhance Oregon City's small town charm. We have to reinforce downtown as the family-friendly civic heart of Oregon City. As you can see with the recent advances you guys have made in tourism, we have to take advantage of and prepare for it as a district. It's already happening, but we need to work on it more, become a destination known for our retail and restaurant experiences. Hopefully, once 10th and Main breaks ground and we have the Cove immediately adjacent become known as a mixed-use live-work district, and then also access to Willamette Falls is critically important to the transformation of downtown. In the flyer that you've received previously, this just summarizes what you might call objectives as we see it for basically property benefit. We want to see full occupancy of existing buildings and completed infill construction projects over the course of this economic improvement district period. Hopefully, we're not too delayed on the Willamette Falls Legacy project, and that is at least in the ground, and if not, has some public access. We've begun outreach to the county with respect to replacing the courthouse and its related functions. We need to see better pedestrian connectivity. We need to see increased sales density for our food and beverage and retail businesses. And hopefully, I believe in February, we'll be talking about tourism at the city level and how do we, as an organization, help with that establishment of that program. And then, assuming urban renewal comes back in full force, that we are expanding those public-private partnerships and relationships to leverage those grant programs to reinvest in downtown Oregon City. We need to maintain a clean and safe downtown and to continue our investment in our existing buildings and support a preservation ethic, essentially, of our contributing historic resources to maintain downtown Oregon City's unique sense of place. I'm not going to read all these to you, but I basically wanted to share with you over the next 2 years, we have a lot of stuff planned to do, and that's how we built the draft or budget essentially for our organization moving forward. And a lot of these benefit property owners, many of them benefit business owners, and then collectively it all benefits the Oregon City resident and the visitor to Oregon City. Just a couple of highlights there. We're definitely interested in how parking is improved downtown, and we're starting that with a nights and weekends program, where we're going to, find any code barriers and then reach out to our lot owners and see if there's a negotiation that we can do to make those available publicly. We do annual in-depth community perception and market research. We could do a better job of sharing that with everyone, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. And a host of other things, including business recruitment and developer recruitment in partnership with the city's economic development department to achieve that goal of full occupancy. Some of what we're talking about with respect to the economic improvement district is around clean and safe. One of the popular programs that we offer that we've heard loud and clear they want to be funded and retained is our Clean Team program, and then a host of other things that are essentially enhancements to the district, including wayfinding, the formation of a North End task force, hopefully winning another $100,000 grant on behalf of property owners in downtown Oregon City in 2019 from the Oregon Main Street program. And then, as you guys know, we provide elevator operations and visitor services, and our goal is to really build upon that opportunity that you've given us over the next couple of years. What you're most familiar with, or probably most visible to you all, is our marketing, tourism, and events programs, and which of course are the big 3 events in the summer, as well as our more regular, smaller promotions. But we also have a whole bunch of things planned over the next 2 years to really tighten our marketing program and increase its effectiveness for the benefit of the business and property owners in downtown. And then with our organizational development side of things, how do we engage with the community? How do we engage with our volunteers? How do we leverage the volunteers, interns, what have you, and making sure they feel involved and are participating in the revitalization of downtown. This doesn't even include board governance and all of that, but we have over 53 projects and programs on this work plan. What you all received last week in your packet was a table that essentially describes these 2 pie charts. And keep in mind, this is everything rolled up into one thing. And it gives you a sense of where our buckets of revenue are projected to come from and our buckets of expenses. And the handout that you received gave more detail to that. But what about the history of the Economic Improvement District in Oregon City? It's changed over time, and we want to kind of stick it right this time and keep it where it's at. And so I'm just going to share with you how some of that's changed based upon the handout that you received. So this was the original Economic Improvement District that was established in 2011. It is kind of like an amoeba, and with lots of carve-outs, and all the way there to Dan's Abernathy Center is right there, just kind of standing out on its own up at the top. And this district was at the maximum allowed by state law, and that was 1% of assessed value. It did it did allow for a cap of 1950, so you didn't get properties paying $15,000, $20,000 assessments. But this was a much more aggressive per lot EID when it was originally formed. Then in 2015, we renegotiated the district to what it looks like here. And it's much more regular. Part of the feedback we received was that you need to wire these carve-outs there, why are these people not paying when I'm paying? They're right next door to me. And so we basically said, railroad over, you're in. And that's kind of how we formed that district. And it did cut significantly the revenue that the organization received as a part of that, and we had to figure out how to think differently for the organization. What we're proposing now, and that you received, we talked about at the last hearing, is a tiered approach that divorces the rates from the property assessment. And the idea there is that if somebody's property assessment goes up, as long as they're not at the statutory limit, their rate won't increase due to that reassessment. So if somebody invests in their building, there's not going to be an automatic penalty of sorts for it making that investment. And so I basically described that. The methodology we're proposing is similar to McMinnville, and it reflects a difference in service across all zones. And so what that means is Zone 1 receives street tree lights. That costs money. And Zone 3 doesn't necessarily want to pay for Zone 1 street tree lights. And Zone 1 gets more clean team focus. Zone 3 or 2 don't necessarily want to pay for that additional focus. And so that's kind of the thinking that went into establishing that. What you have new today, which was voted on by our board of directors yesterday, is that we have voted to separate the EID from our general fund. Like I described earlier, an EID essentially describes a Main Street program. Technically, it can be a part of our general fund. But we took it to heart, a lot of the outreach that we received, that there needs to be some transparency as to how we are making that purposeful investment on an annual basis relative to what the property owners see as the greatest need to make sure that their properties and their tenants have value. It also helps us clearly delineate between what the EID pays for versus what something else pays for. This breakdown is based on some research that I did across other districts and other states that have much more stringent requirements for budgeting for property assessment districts. And this is something that we are prepared to mail out to our ratepayers and the proposed ratepayers as early as tomorrow, so we can continue to get their feedback on it. But I just want to keep in mind that this is an internal governance change. Nothing has changed in terms of the ordinance that is proposed, but that I want you guys to know that we're thinking very clearly about how we're continuing to and making sure that people understand the value that we're delivering to them. And so the process that the board has discussed is that we'll seek advisement from our ratepayers, and we'll continue to get input down the road as to how we tighten that feedback loop from those ratepayers. And then also committing to report at least twice yearly to the ratepayers on the status of the budget of the EID and how those monies were spent.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that. I think that this really will provide a lot of clarity for the ratepayers. They won't have to weed through the spreadsheets and the charts and the graphs to see. I mean, we're already giving that value, but it'll make it very clear, and then they'll also have a chance, for input on it. and to make choices. So I'm very, very proud of that.
So what this also says is that the proposed programs that we're proposing to include, and it's possible we get a ton of feedback and say, we don't want the street tree lights, we don't want the clean team, we don't want this. Well, then we'll have to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, property owners, how should we spend your money? If they choose to not remonstrate and to give you guys the ability to, enact the district. But we don't anticipate that being, because all the outreach that we've been doing are saying those are programs that have a lot of broad support by our property owners. And I just want to reiterate that after tonight, we're asking for your vote on the first hearing to start the clock. We're going to continue to do our outreach, and we're not asking you to make adjustments to the proposal, even though it is your right to. So are there any questions about that?
Could you go back to the pie chart?
Yes.
So could you explain a little bit more what you might have in mind in terms of expanded business and property development services?
So the idea there is that we do some of that, and so, you know, the EID benefits from that. But when we say expanded is that we are committing to doing more of it. And whether that's regular outreach, I mean, even the last couple of weeks, I've been on the phone with prospective tenants of downtown. I'm working with a hopefully high-profile tenant that you know is could be coming to downtown, and those are people that we've trying to introduce to property owners that have those spaces. But we see ourselves in the future as much more of a connector. And how do we track those interests? And And then what one of our property owners suggested when we had a meeting with them last week was, you need to tell us about those metrics. And if not twice yearly, maybe more frequently, we can say, we received X number of impressions on our business recruitment ads. We received X number of leads. This is what happened to them. And so we're looking to track those things much more clearly, and then also sharing the market research that we do a bit more regularly, and in ways that help property owners make better investments and decisions for their buildings.
But the goal is to keep the lease spaces full.
Thank you.
So I'm going to take.
And a waiting list.
We're going to go in the order of the public hearings procedure. So I'm going to take public testimony at this time, and then you guys can get a chance to rebut, and then the commission can ask questions at that time.
Okay. Thank you, Commission.
So up we have Mayor Fowler and Jean Gregoria.
Good evening, Mayor Holliday and members of the commission. Dan Fowler, property owner within the district. Just here to support the proposal tonight and encourage you to start the ball rolling on it. I think the Main Street organization has done a really good job of looking at the district, adjusting the various zones this year, and including more property. And the downtown is really turning a corner, and it's not the time to end it. It's time to keep it going. I don't need to tell you the exciting things that could be happening. Obviously, the Cove's starting to go. We all look forward to the legacy project. So it's really important to keep a strong Main Street organization, and I encourage you to support this.
Gene?
My name is Gene Gregoria. I'm a local business owner here. I just wanted to also make a quick comment in favor of the EID and of Downtown Oregon City Association in general. They've been a big help to us all throughout our business startup and in continuing to help with marketing and even running events, even if they're not directly reflected in sales that day. We get people that were there for the event, they came back downtown and said, we fell in love with Oregon City, it's so charming, whether it's, especially in the winter when we have the street trees lit and, they kind of have that backdrop against the snow and things like that. I think they've just done a lot of things for us personally, and then I think just for the entirety of creating Oregon City, downtown Oregon City as a destination, as a place that people in the neighboring communities talk about as the place for them to go, and for more and more people who live in Oregon City to say, you know what, actually when I get in my car, I'm not going to drive to Portland. I'm just going to go downtown and see what's going on down there. And, I really can't say enough about what they've done, again, for us and for what my perception of to help downtown thrive. So
good.
That's it.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Is there any other public testimony? Okay, seeing none, I will, obviously there's no rebuttal, but do you guys want to come back up? And we'll let the commission ask questions, and then I'll close the public hearing. So who wants to go first?
Okay.
Okay.
So, I think it's great that you're doing this outreach and kind of getting this cohesive area together down there now because of the courthouse. And that's going to could be a big deal either way. Maybe something great's going to happen there, maybe not. So, but I think it's great you're kind of coordinating everybody and getting everybody together as a group so they can kind of process that if and when it happens. Do we know what percentage of the courthouse and all the little offshoots of that kind of contribute to Main Street there, or that's kind of a big question? So
Can you define contribute?
I don't know. That's just it. I don't know what we know.
Yeah, I can give you a general idea.
Yeah.
So there's starting at across from U.S. Bank.
I know the physical part of it. I'm just wondering what kind of revenue or what is half the business that's generated in downtown coming from the courthouse folks, or what do you think?
I can speak to that.
Sure. Probably don't have an answer for that, but
Yeah, we don't have the data on that.
yeah.
But I will tell you that if the courthouse would have vacated 10 years ago, or even a few years ago, even 5 years ago, it'd be a far different story than now, because now our downtown is much, much stronger. Before, you would go to downtown and you would go to a bar or the courthouse, and maybe a couple things in between. But now we have visitors down there, residents down there during the day, not to go to the courthouse, but actually to patronize the businesses down there. And in the evening too, it's much safer. So now I feel that we're poised very well to have the courthouse move. We're still gonna miss them. It's going to be a change, but we are in the position where we can really strategize and come together with all the partners involved and try to make sure that there's a good reuse for that. I mean, preservation obviously is a value of the Main Street organization, so that's something really to consider. But it'll be community conversation. But we definitely are stronger downtown now, so I'm confident.
The city and the county are already having discussions about
Right.
the courthouse.
And we met with the city manager and Laurel Buttman and Gary yesterday
Just
as well.
yesterday.
But you bring up a great point for important data points to seek out in our market research for this year. And if we can quantify that hopefully it'll help the county understand the overall impacts and help our businesses prepare for that eventuality.
Yeah, I think we're pretty comfortable with what's going on at night there, and you can't find a parking place down there at night. So, but I guess my worry is during the day for that lunch crowd and stuff.
And that's a worry of ours too. And
I'm sure you're well aware of that. So I mean, like I say, it's great that you guys are, getting this cohesive program together here. So all the owners and are communicating with each other and kind of work their way all through this. So the other thing was, we kind of had a discussion the other day about business licenses and stuff and new ones coming in. But when businesses leave downtown there, do you do an exit interview at all, or do you know why they're leaving? And and stuff like that, so that, you know, you can kind of build on or to correct anything that might be a problem there, that, so we don't have people leaving.
Sure. To the extent that we can, we definitely try to keep a pulse on all of the businesses. And when we know, if a business is leaving, we generally know, you know, like for instance, Therapeutic Associates left, but I believe they purchased their own building and they were having space constraints, and I understand that decision of theirs. And then, like, when businesses fail, we generally understand what the reasons are for that, and if there's a systematic reason for that to happen, then we try to make sure that we're aware of that and addressing it across the entire district.
Okay. Thanks.
I'd like to kind of go back in history a little bit. I know that there was a lot of angst when the county commissioners building left for the Hilltop, and what might happen to that building. And now it's a home to at least 5 different businesses that are on the tax rolls and creating jobs. So I think that same scenario will happen over time with the courthouse and the various county associated buildings. So I think it's a great opportunity for downtown, even though the short term may be a lot to absorb.
Sure. Well, my personal goal is that the last desk leaves the courthouse is the day after is when they begin construction. So that's not an institutional goal, but I think we all share that as an ideal, right? So, and we've already talked about the possibility of bringing in an intern to do a landscape study of courthouse conversions across the country. And if we can share that data with the county and help inspire everybody around, is like, you know, hey, this is possible. Other places have done it. That's kind of where our thinking is to start with that conversation.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
So there's no question that the goals of your organization are commendable. The results have been gratifying. My understanding of the last discussion we had here was the commission was there's a question between DOCA and its membership as to the equity of the assessment from the ratepayers. And the commission didn't want to be the arbiter of that arrangement. And it strikes me that that's more a budgetary internal discussion. Do you feel you resolve that to the point where the commission can comfortably make a decision on this?
So the points of decision at the ordinance level, as I understand it, and somebody else can correct me if I'm wrong, is at this point that would be what is the cap, and are there any other restrictions placed on the upper level of the assessments? And we're not asking you to make those decisions. If for some reason during our outreach, continued outreach, it looks like that we are headed maybe for what we don't anticipate will be too many remonstrators, that we would come back to you with a specific adjustment to that, and that would be then based on our outreach to those people. And so we're not asking for you guys to do that. With respect to the internal budgeting, this proposal that you see on the screen is going to be mailed to the property owners as soon as the district has been, essentially once you guys approve the ordinance, to then mail out the proposed assessments to the property owners. We're going to precede your mailing with a mailing from us explaining those governance things, and then we're going to continue the outreach to those people that we haven't heard from yet, and to make sure that they understand the process and oversight improvements that we've made.
Since this is a budgetary discussion, does the city continue to contribute financial support to this organization?
We do, and we have in the approved budget, it's $60,000 per year that we contribute to the organization.
How many years have we done that?
Ooh, boy.
We've done 2 cycles for 60,000.
I think
the first cycle was 50,000.
How many years have we done that?
So, let's see.
Since 2011,
Since
yeah.
2011.
The reason I asked that is I spoke to a previous commissioner, and their position was that we were there to provide seed money to get the organization up and started, but it was not supposed to be a contribution in perpetuity. And I don't know if we want to visit that or not, but that's insight from a previous commissioner.
I don't think we want to visit that today, but I think most of you, if not all of you, understand my position on funding festivals or any kinds of organizations that we're a government and we should be providing governmental services. And as a long-term goal, I think we're in the second year of two-year biennium or first year. So I think that's a discussion we need to have at the end of the biennium, since we've already budgeted for the two-year cycle. But I've always said that, we shouldn't be giving taxpayer money on an ongoing basis to a private organization. And I would look at it like beyond the geographical approach, DOCA is not a whole lot different than the Chamber of Commerce, right. And we don't provide ongoing support to the Chamber. So I think that's something else that you guys should be looking at and planning for as we move forward into 2019, 2020. Is that right?
Can I just make 2 points to that?
Sure.
One is it's considered best practice across, in terms of like for Main Street organizations, and in Canby they actually employ their Main Street director on city staff, and so that's a version of subsidizing their Main Street organization. But the national model and sort of best practice is a third, more or less. And a third comes from city. And fortunately, your contribution is much less than a third with the success of our other grant raising and stuff like that. But our grants go directly to the projects to support. They don't necessarily pay for the operations of the organization. Then the second point with respect to the chamber, many chambers receive government support. Our chamber, to my understanding, has specifically chosen not to participate in tourism. If you look across the state and chambers that receive government support, they've made that decision to also act as the local conduit for the lodging tax. And for those chambers, that helps support their operations so that they can then provide other chamber services. So there is many examples of chambers being supported on an ongoing basis, but that's because of the choice to participate in the transient lodging tax.
Well, not to degrade anything that you guys have done, because you've done a great job in downtown Oregon City, and from my teenage years, what downtown Oregon City looked like to what it looks like now is a completely different place. It doesn't change my political philosophy that government should do government things, and that we shouldn't take the taxpayers' money and give it to private organizations, except on a short-term basis.
I'm dying to say something.
Go ahead.
So I understand that philosophy very, very well. But in this, one of the reasons why in the national model the government does give money is because this type of organization serves as an economic arm also for the city, and it's revitalization for a whole district that benefits the city. So unlike a chamber that just focuses on, in particular businesses, this is the whole entire district. It's placemaking, it's revitalization, it's preservation, and it's economic development. And that's why it is in some cities under the economic development category.
Okay, well,
happy to have the conversation.
We can have this discussion at the budget time for the next biennium.
Pardon my interruption. I just wanted to clarify for the record the staff's records of the $60,000 and how that's applied. So coming here 5 years ago, it was made very clear to me from the commission at the time and the city manager at the time that the $60,000 was a city contribution to be in place so long as the EID was renewed by the downtown organization. So that had been my direction up to this point. Of course, I'm happy to serve at yours and the commission's pleasure. But consistently, we've had that discussion internal, that if the downtown organizations don't contribute to their own EID, the city would then withdraw at $60,000. That's what I have in my records.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there any further discussion on the proposal for tonight?
Well, I've got a question for John. Is your position tonight that we should proceed with the motion to allow you to do your continued surveys to your members and come back with your information that we have X amount of support and we're
So,
Because I don't think that's particularly an endorsement of it by the commission. It's just an allowance to go forward.
yeah, you can view it as not an endorsement of it. It basically, once, if you vote yes tonight on the first reading of the ordinance, then begins the mailing and noticing of property owners with the assessed rates essentially as established by you.
So this is a 30-day clock?
Yes.
Minimum 30 days.
So
yeah.
this is, tonight's intent is just to establish the desire to assess the district.
So when you say minimum, is there a maximum?
Well, the state law requires 30 days, and
So it's no less than 30 days. We
But
have
it
to
can go
notice.
on for how long?
It does not specify.
Okay. Further questions?
You could potentially come back and people remonstrate to the point that you don't have the financial support.
right. So if property owners representing more than 33% of the assessments object, then it's out of your hands. The state law doesn't allow you to enact the district.
So we will do that. We will send out the assessments for each individual property, and then we will take in the objections, and we will calculate whether or not they've reached the 33%, and that's what we'll bring back to you. And then you have options. So you have options whether to discontinue the effort. You could ask us to go back and redraw the boundaries. You could ask us to recalculate or go back out and do some additional outreach to those folks that have objected.
Commissioner Mangelberg?
I'd like to just say thank you for taking the input that you received from us in December to heart and enhancing your outreach efforts and refining your message. It's really much more clear how it operates and what it is funding, and I think it will really go a long way in getting the support that you need.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Jonathan has spent many, many hours on this.
Yeah, I just want to point out, and just in full disclosure, I'm the commission's appointee to the Downtown Association Board. So I've been privy to a lot of these conversations. But I just wanted to point out that DOCA has heard and responded to many of the business owners' comments regarding the EID, to the programs that it supported, and how the money is being spent and so forth. And so I think that this proposal to remove the EID fund from the general fund, I think it's just like a win-win. I think it's a great opportunity to be very clear to all the members of the EID that what their money is going for, instead of it just being all, put into a general fund and hopefully they're doing what they said they were going to do. But I just wanted to point that out, that they heard the comments and then responded appropriately. So
Thank you. And I want to add too, so we don't have to get 100% for it to pass, okay? But we want to get 100%. And we feel that this is a big step forward for clarity, for transparency, for accountability, and for participation too. So that's our goal. We want everybody to be on board and part of the process, because every business down there is important. Every property owner is important.
Further questions? Then I'm going to close the public hearing. You guys can take your seats and we'll see what we see.
Thank you.
While they do that, Mayor, if I could interject for just a second, it is listed on the agenda as a first reading, but the way your ordinance is set out for the adoption of the EID, the first reading would come at the next hearing. So what, you set the resolution back in November to start it up, then you have the first public hearing when you have a general, here's the ordinance that we like, and then it goes out for 30 days notice and the remonstrances come in, and that's when the first reading happens. So essentially, you're not having a first reading this evening. What you're doing is approving the ordinance and the assessments for distribution, for lack of a better term.
So we're approving the ordinance as to form?
More or less, yeah.
Okay, so is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Shaw, seconded by Commissioner Mangelberg. Is there further discussion? Call the roll.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw.
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg.
Aye.
Commissioner Ide.
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye. Okay. So that's all, under general business, park operations funding, facility funding, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I will keep this short as we just had this conversation at the work session last week on January 9th. To paraphrase, the staff is presenting to you information in regards to the park operations facility. We did receive direction from Commission to move forward on a conceptual plan, which costs approximately $1.3 million to develop. Commission has previously identified $650,000 in funds to use towards the construction of that facility. Staff have found additional $300,000 in funds, which we will be able to reallocate from previous allocated funds for this budget biennium to move towards the park operations facility, and had presented previously to the Park and Recreation Advisory Committee a proposal to use $350,000 in parks SDCs to bridge the gap to be able to provide the full budget to construct the facility as proposed. I would like to again reiterate both the Commission and the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee's goals of one, providing funds from the park system development charges for development of Glen Oak Park, and two, the funds necessary to provide the development of Filbert Run Park would be projects that would be feasible given the current funds that we have in our park system development charges. We would still also have available funds to provide for the park operations facility. Even with those funds, we would have additional funds left over as a contingency in our park system development charges. So with that, I will turn it over for discussion and if there's any questions.
What are you asking us for?
So we are asking for direction to move forward with a funding recommendation for the park operations facility.
I thought we had a consensus on that from the work session.
We were asked to bring it back at a public hearing at the end of the work session, because I don't think we had consensus.
Okay. So is there discussion?
Let's see. So I can appreciate the Parks and Rec Commission's work and that their thoughtfulness about thinking ahead about property purchasing with SDC funds. So up here, we kind of have to balance that with facilities that we have already, that if we don't improve those at this time and we keep putting that off and off, yet still building SDC funds, and we buy more property, we don't have the facilities to maintain the facilities that we have. And so I do appreciate their work, but unfortunately here, I think we do need to get our maintenance facilities up and running. And as we talked about at work session, that it's not only the physical building itself, but employee retention and other things that we need to get resolved before we start, adding more property. But I appreciate their efforts about looking ahead with new annexations coming on and trying to get ahead of the game and getting some property lined up. So, thanks.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Well, I'm pretty respectful of Parks and Rec's recommendations, and I understand what they've said, and I also understand the sources of the funding as explained by Mr. Parno and how it's to be used. I am troubled by the condition of the parks, and quite honestly, Phil, I asked you a long time ago to get me an assessment of the condition of the equipment, what needs to be repaired, what needs to be replaced, what's taken out of service. And I don't know if I need a vote of 3 people to get that or not, but I sure would like to see that because that's part of the decision-making process for me. As far as the building itself, to me, they're like churches. A church is not a building, it's the quality of people in it. Do I feel you're losing people because of the quality of your building? I seriously doubt it. You're probably losing them because of wage concerns, but not that. Do I think we need a new bathroom? No, we certainly do. Do we need some new facilities? We certainly do. So, all those things will weigh in how I cast my vote tonight.
Mr. Hyde?
I had some concerns about the use of the SDC funds, just more or less because of my, I just needed to be informed more. But since then, I've done quite a bit of research and talked with several people, and the main thing for me is that I'm convinced that using the SDCs will not impact the construction of the other two parks that are kind of waiting in the wings. And so the use of that, the $350K toward the new facility, to me, I don't have any problem with that anymore. I did it first, and I wish there was another way, but staff did go out and find about $300,000 to add to the funds that you already had in the bank, waiting for this project. So, I think staff did their due diligence, and we need to step up and allow the use of the SDCs. So I'm convinced that it's the right thing to do. And also I think it's legally, after what Tony provided some information from the ORS about SDCs, that you can use them for acquiring and developing the property because it's related to the need for increased capacity to provide service for future users. So that also weighed a lot on my thinking. So I'm going to be supporting this.
So I was not at the work session, but I did watch it online, and so I feel a little bit more informed. I also feel it's appropriate to use SDCs for the remaining need. We, as a commission, told the Parks Department that we wanted them to have a bigger facility to meet their long-term need, and so their costs are higher because of our specific direction. And so we need to be able to provide the resources for them to do that. And using SDCs is an allowed use, and the enhanced efficiency of a better facility helps them do their job better. So I would be supporting their recommendation.
Is there a motion?
I think Commissioner Hyde, are you doing it?
Oh, well, let's
You're
see
looking.
exactly how don't you want me to say this? I guess the motion would be,
To authorize the city manager and parks director to move forward using SDC funds.
well, is that, I guess that's right. Can I have some help, please?
And move that the city manager and parks director follow the recommended course of action and provide it in the staff report and associated documents.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Hyde, seconded by Commissioner Mengelberg. Is there further discussion? Call roll, please.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Ide,
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye.
Motion passes.
We've got history coming up here.
Yes, what happened there?
So, anybody want to pull anything off the consent agenda? So, is there a motion?
Move to approve the agenda there.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Shaw, seconded by Commissioner Hyde. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Mengelberg,
Aye.
Commissioner Ide,
Aye.
Mayor Holliday.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Communications, Mr. Manager.
Thank you. The one update that I have tonight on the dais before you is the financial reports for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2017. It's our comprehensive annual financial report, referred to as the CAFR for Oregon City and the Oregon City Urban Renewal Agency. including we went through an independent financial audit performed by the firm Marina and Company, LLP. The auditors issued an unmodified or clean opinion. That means that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position and activities of the city and agency for the year. As you may recall, the CAFR qualified for the Government Finance Official Officers Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting in 2016. We believe this 2017 CAFR conforms to those requirements of the award program as well, and will be submitted to the GFOA for consideration. Just really proud of the work that Mr. Parno and the Finance Department has done in putting together these financial reports as well as the budgets that lead up to them. It's just really a great testament to him and his department to come back with a clean financial report based on an independent audit with no recommendations. So just hats off to him and his group for all the hard work and the reporting that's continues to impress.
Thank you, Mr. Parno. Great job.
Wyatt can answer any questions more specific that I might not be able to answer if you have any.
It's a large document, so feel free to peruse and give me a call if you have any questions.
Good. Thank you.
I'll try not to read it while I'm driving.
That concludes my updates tonight, unless you have questions.
Nope. So, Commissioner O'Donnell, you got anything for us?
No, sir.
Commissioner Shaw?
Just a couple things here. Did attend the our municipal pool open house. And that was a great project there. You don't realize how much of an improvement they've done there over the years and how much money they spent on that building, but it's that thing's world class right now, and it was very popular. It was very well attended and everything. So, Mr. Lewis, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And I attended.
Swim.
Pardon?
Ice cream or swim? I'm betting ice cream.
Well, since they offered me a swimming suit, but I did not take them up on that. You know, you don't need to put that in the paper either. They're cursing. That's fine. You know, so.
And
went to the CCBA, which is Clackamas County Business Alliance, on Wednesday. I go to those occasionally just to kind of tell them about what's going on in Oregon City. And which I did tell them, and usually it's, I think at that one there, it was just Mr. Knapp from Wilsonville and myself, so out of all the counties. So it was, we did get some exposure, so it was good. The other thing was I went to that Therapeutic Associates open house in their new building on Molalla. Very nice. This parking sucks, but we're used to that. That's it.
Commissioner Mengelberg, anything?
Just that the Oregon ODOT is going through a public outreach at the moment around tolling on I-205 and I-5, and so there's an online survey and a number of open houses about it. So if people had opinions, please do weigh in.
Commissioner Hyde?
Several things, except just only one noteworthy. And the Willamette Falls Locks Work Group that had convened had its last meeting, and it will be then once the governor appoints the new members to the commission to continue its work on getting the locks opened. That should be coming up here pretty quick.
We expect to hear sometime in the next couple of weeks, because they've tentatively scheduled the first meeting of the Locks Commission for January 29th.
So I enjoyed working on that. It was kind of eye-opening to me because I haven't kind of been in the loop on that for a while. So I enjoyed that process. So that's all.
And I did want to ask, do we have a general consensus on getting an inventory of what's wrong in the parks and what's broken? And okay, so
when time available for him to do it, yeah.
That'd be a good work session.
Yeah, we will be providing a brief update during the retreat later on this month.
Okay. Other than that, I City manager and I had a couple of meetings talking to private developers about investing in Oregon City. That is all I'm at liberty to say, but just to let you know that we, as well as Eric and other economic development folks, are out there beating the bushes to get some things started here in Oregon City. Other than that, unless there's something for the good of the order, we're adjourned.